Voices. Carla and I have had the honor of chairing Voices this year. But like so much has happened in 2020, this is not at all what we had planned or anticipated back in December. But we are so thankful to the incredible Voices Committee, to our board members, but to the amazing staff who worked so hard to shift the mind and make this a virtual experience. Again, thank you for coming, and we hope you appreciate the incredible work, just as we do, of the Women's Fund.
Greetings. I am Erica R. Burnett, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga. On behalf of our board, staff, Voices Committee, and the event co-chairs, I want to thank you all for joining us for this Virtual Voices 2020 luncheon. We are so excited for you to join us today as we reflect, celebrate, and gear up during this critical time in history. I once again thank our amazing co-chairs, Linda and Carla, for your diligence and grit in seeing this event through. I also want to take time to thank our committed sponsors for making this event possible. First Horizon, BB&T SunTrust, now Truist, EPB Fiber Optics, and a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Without your generous support, we would not be gathered here today, both near and far, unified under one mission, to move Tennessee from 49 to 1 for every woman and every girl. I want to welcome our longtime supporters and our new friends joining us today. Now, here's a bit more about the impactful work of the Women's Fund. The Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga unites efforts for social change that improve life for women and girls across Tennessee. We catalyze movement towards a just society that is safe, nurturing, and full of opportunity for women.
As a social worker and someone who teaches college students who are just entering the field, I was so intrigued with the work that the Women's Fund was doing. I really wanted them to come talk to our students about current things that are happening and how they can be a part of the movement as they begin in their career. These are current issues now. These are relevant. This isn't issues that your mother or your grandmother were working with. These are issues that women are working with now that you'll be working with in the field. And how might you best work with them if you don't understand that some of the struggles that they may be going through aren't just because of the path they may have taken in their life, they're also because policies may work against them.
After 6 years of collaboration with our partners, led in coalition by A Better Balance, Tennessee passed the Tennessee Pregnant Workers Fairness Act this year.
In order to pass a successful piece of legislation, it's often several years in the making, and there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. And the Women's Fund has been an incredible partner in helping us do a lot of that work and demonstrate the broad support for proposals like the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So, we were so excited that the law passed this year. It passed with unanimous support in the legislature. This is such a huge win for working women and their families in our state to be able to feel empowered that, they do have these protections in the workplace, that they're going to be able to continue working and supporting their families and get any accommodations that they may need.
Through our Nightingale Network of collective philanthropy, we support local organizations working to remove systemic barriers for women and their families. We convene local organizations serving women and girls, creating a robust network of partners fighting for the same cause. Because we know that in order to move Tennessee from 49 to 1, we need as many voices as we can get working together strategically and passionately.
The advocacy component that we do with Janine Carpenter is really to teach us the different types of advocacy and how to engage and prepare our girls to understand that you're never too young to have a voice. So they come in and kind of give us real life examples, and we have dialogue and discussion, and we brainstorm how do we equip our girls as early as 6 to advocate not only for themselves, but to advocate for their peers, to advocate for their communities.
The Women's Fund envisions a Tennessee where women have everything they need to thrive. This year has shown us, in sharp focus, that our work is necessary, and our history of success demonstrates that our work is effective.
You know, I think it's essential that we continue to support the Women's Fund. We have populations that are voiceless, and having the Women's Fund being a voice for the voiceless is essential for a just society.
With the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga, Girls Inc. girls will be stronger, smarter, and bolder. They will have the resources and the tools to navigate from girlhood to womanhood. So we are very appreciative of the partnership, the relationship, the training, the advocacy. And because of that, we know that our mission is in full effect and we have the support of the community as well.
We would love for you to get involved as well. Please reach out, join our advocacy committee, or become a member of our Nightingale Network. We also hope that you will consider a financial contribution to the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga. To donate, please visit ChattanoogaWomen'sFund.org. If you are able to invest in our work in any way, we are grateful for your support. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome again to the Voices Luncheon. I'm Jennifer Harper, current board chair for the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga. We just heard from an amazing group of local and statewide partners of the Women's Fund and learned about the legislative success of the Pregnant Worker Fairness Act this year. As they mentioned, this year has put into sharp focus the importance of our work, and we have a strong history of being effective policy advocates for the women and girls in Tennessee. To sustain and grow the impact of the Women's Fund, we ask for your financial support today. On your screen, you should be able to see the text to give information. To donate, please text TN49 to 1 to 243-725 or visit our website anytime at ChattanoogaWomen'sFund.org. Again, that is TN49 to 1 to 243-725. As a generous offer of support from one of our donors, we're happy to announce today that we have a $10,000 matching grant available. Help us meet and exceed our goal of making the most of this matching grant. We're grateful for your support. While you take a moment, I also want to highlight other big legislative wins from this year. The Women's Fund successfully advocated for the passage of the Hope Scholarship extension, which allows pregnant students to maintain their Hope Scholarship by allowing a time limit extension due to pregnancy. Another important piece of legislation we successfully advocated for was the addition of dating violence education to the family life curriculum here in Tennessee. If you recall from last year's Voices event, we reported that Tennessee is ranked in the top 10 in the nation for domestic violence homicides. By passing this important piece of legislation, Tennessee can help improve the education students need to identify, avoid, and report dating violence. These are just some of this year's examples of the impact of our work. These policies directly impact the women and girls of Tennessee today. We need your support to continue this work. As a reminder, our text to give is TN49 to 1 to 243-725 or visit ChattanoogaWomen'sFund.org to donate today. Already, we've received generous support. We're already above $500 today, so closing in on $600 it looks like. So thank you so much for your support. Once more, that number is TN49 to 1 to 243-725 to donate. And now it is my pleasure to announce our next speaker, Dr. C. Nicole Mason. She is the president and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research, a leading national voice on pay equity, economic policies, and research impacting women. Dr. Mason is a working single mother and author of Born Bright, a young girl's journey from nothing to something in America. She understands through lived experience the importance of our work. Please join me in welcoming Dr. C. Nicole Mason.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really very excited to be here. Yes, my name is Nicole Mason, and I'm the president and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research. the nation's preeminent think tank committed to winning economic equity and building women's power and influence in society. I feel very humbled to be leading IWPR and joining you all at the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga at this historic moment. I don't take for granted this platform and the power of sound research to drive policy and lift up the experiences of the women and communities we all care so deeply about. And I know that what we do and what we say in this moment matters immensely. Before I discuss what's needed to accelerate change and equity for women in Tennessee, I want to touch on some of the issues I see affecting women nationally, especially as the pandemic continues to take hold and we're seeing historic losses for women across the country. What we also know is that the effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic will be long lasting and will impact many of our ongoing struggles like pay equity and countering racial and gender discrimination in the workforce. The pay gap is set to close in 2059 for all women. For Black women, Latina, and Indigenous women, it will take more than a century. If we continue at this pace, my daughter and my daughter's daughter will not see pay equity in their lifetime. Contributing to this gap are overlapping issues of pervasive gender and racial discriminations, women's overrepresentation in lower wage jobs, and underrepresentation in higher wage ones. And the unusual and unequal, not unusual actually, division of household labor and caregiving responsibilities. In this moment, women are doing double duty, having to be the primary caretaker and provider for their families, but also having to figure out how to work from home and to make ends meet. What's also contributing to women's burden today is the unequal representation in the halls of power and of Congress. We know that when women are represented and are in the halls of power, we have better policies, we have solutions and strategies rooted in the lived experiences of women's lives. But while women comprise 50% of the population, we're just 23% of elected seats in Congress and about 1 in 3 in state legislative seats. This election cycle, women are mobilizing in their communities, shaping the debates and direction and priorities, and stepping up to run for office in unprecedented ways. This election cycle alone, more than 500 women have filed to run for office. And we know that we're in the battle of our lives for the soul of our country, but also the direction of it, and working to make sure that the systems and institutions that we hold so dearly are working for the most vulnerable among us. As you know, the COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on working women and their families across the country and has triggered an economic recession that will have a lasting impact on women's long-term economic well-being, careers, and earnings. The latest job data report showed women lost 5.8 million jobs since the pandemic started. The crisis has also exacerbated and deepened many of the existing inequalities and disparities, health, income, and racial, and exposed many of our failing systems that were not working for many women and families. For a state like Tennessee, which has consistently struggled with low rates of employment and earnings and high rates of poverty for women, the need for immediate real-world solutions is great. When I was preparing for my remarks today, I couldn't help but think about the last time I was in Tennessee. It was a few years ago. I was in Sevierville, a city where 36% of residents live below the federal poverty line, 3 times the national poverty rate. While there, I met a woman who was employed as a full-time nanny and worked as a part-time driver for one of the 2 major ride-sharing companies. Her husband was unemployed and they were waiting to hear back from their mortgage about a loan modification because they had fallen behind on their payments. I could hear both the frustration and resignation in her voice. She was losing her grip on the American dream. Today, I can only imagine how her economic vulnerability and uncertainty must be magnified. and how her experiences then are reflective of the experiences of many women and families across the country in Tennessee and right here in Chattanooga, where the poverty rate is 20% and many families are hanging on by a thread. There's an urgency to this extraordinary moment that cannot be denied. The decisions we make today about how to engage others and how we show up with the moral courage to support, protect, and provide for those who have less power, privilege, or ability will determine our future and whether we will become further disconnected or realize our shared humanity. There's an opportunity to build and create new systems. From the economy to the healthcare and childcare infrastructures, we have an opportunity to build a more fair, just, and equitable society. The 49-to-1 campaign of the Women's Fund of Chattanooga will help us to do that. Two key elements of the overall campaign aimed at improving the lives of Tennessee women and girls, paid sick leave, paid family leave, and maternal health depend on good, high-functioning systems. Currently, Tennessee has no laws requiring private employers to provide family leave. We know that without paid leave, mothers miss pay, fear for their jobs, and face economic uncertainty. And job loss means the loss of health insurance and the loss of good care for mothers and their babies. COVID-19 has exposed the fragility of our health system, one that many women felt didn't serve them well. Compared with other high-income countries, women in the US spend $2,000 more on out-of-pocket healthcare expenses for themselves and their families. For many, adequate healthcare is out of reach. Here in Tennessee, 1 in 4 women report not seeing a doctor in the past month due to cost, 12 months due to cost, and nearly a quarter report being in fair or poor health. A direct link exists between these findings and high maternal birth rates, death rates among Black women, the birth of premature babies, and the high rates of COVID-19 among racial and ethnic minorities. Make no mistake about it, as we attempt to rebuild our economy, securing paid leave and access to maternal health care will be critical to women's ability to not only re-enter the workforce, but to sustain employment. These are not nice to have policies. These are must have for women and families attempting to regain their economic footing. Now is the time for change. This is our moment to accelerate. I'm fighting for my daughter, my neighbors, and for women who live in cities and communities across the country whose paths I may never cross. The Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga is asking you to do the same, to lift up your voice on the issues that matter to you, your families, and communities. We're asking you to join the 49-to-1 campaign, to give of your time, your energy, and resources in big and small ways. Join us on the front lines.
Dr. Mason, what an honor to have you join us today. You gave us so much to think about. And I can say for me personally, the intersection of my identities, right? Like everything that you just named, we are the embodiment of a lot of the challenges, not only current day challenges, but historical challenges that we face together. And so on behalf of the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga, our partners across the state, every advocate, foot soldier, and ally in this movement, I sincerely thank you for your servant leadership and your inspirational boldness. I'm so glad that you were able to be here with us today. I actually had the privilege of joining a few of our local leaders to discuss some of the pertinent issues that you lifted up for us. And so I'm going to invite everyone to take a look and join us for this conversation. Thank you for joining us for this Voices 2020 Issue Roundtable discussion. I'm joined today by an incredible group of leaders working diligently to shift the trajectory for women and girls across the state. On behalf of the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga, I thank you for your time and more importantly for your work as you and your organizations continue to champion these important issues such as paid leave and maternal health across our state. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. First, please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the mission of your organization. I'll start with Kelly.
Hello. I'm Kelly Mowers. I am with Awake. That's Advocates for Women and Kids Equality. We advocate for the advancement of women and kids in Tennessee through education and policy change.
Yes, hi, Elizabeth Gedmark. I am Vice President at A Better Balance, and we are a national advocacy organization advancing justice for workers so they can care for themselves and their loved ones without risking their economic security.
Hello, I'm Tamara Curran, and I'm the Director of Maternal Child Health and Government Affairs at the March of Dimes here in Tennessee.
Hi, Erica. It is very great to be here today. My name is Kristen Mejia, and I'm the founder, CEO, and president of Homeland Heart Birth and Wellness Collective. We are based in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are a community-based doula organization.
So I want to thank each of you for joining me today. It's truly an honor to share space with you. We just heard remarks from the incredible C. Nicole Mason, who put many of these pertinent issues that your organizations are seeking to impact in perspective for us from a national lens. So I want to take some time today to dive just a little deeper and explore the embodiment of these challenges here locally. So I'm going to start with Kelly and Elizabeth. And my question to you is, what are the negative impacts that face women specifically because of the absence of paid leave policies in Tennessee? And how do these negative consequences spread throughout their communities and families? We'll start with Kelly.
Thank you, Erica. I think just, looking high level, there are obviously a lot of ways that this, the absence of this affects women. I think about it in kind of three buckets. So family planning, job and income security, and then, just the perpetuation of norms and stereotypes in our society. So when you think about family planning, without that paid leave security, it's forcing families to choose between childcare and income. And this forced decision really doesn't take into account the needs of the mother, many times physical and emotional needs that often last beyond 12 weeks. And it also doesn't take into account special needs from the infant. There has been a stigma around women taking leave and taking a longer leave than is typical, right? And then that becomes a stigma around caregiving and who, gendering that. So who is typically responsible for unpaid labor and unpaid care work?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the economic impact, and that is absolutely what we see. So taking a step back, just to be clear, in Tennessee, we don't have paid family leave. So moms every day have to choose between, do I send my sick kid to school with a fever, or do I take an unpaid day that I cannot afford? And the economic consequences are staggering. And the problem does disproportionately affect women of color and low-wage workers. And in Tennessee, there is a long history of fighting for paid family leave. So in 2015, Tennessee, we were very excited, was a state that was granted an Obama grant to study paid family leave. But our state actually chose to give that money back because it was deemed too controversial of a topic. But we won't stop fighting. We have wonderful partners, just like the Women's Fund for Greater Chattanooga, who's been working with us on a public sector Tennessee policy that would provide, at least for those state employees, some paid family leave. And again, that's gender neutral, going to the point about stereotypes, that it's for women and men.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Elizabeth, for bringing to light what these issues look like and really showing the interconnectedness, right? Like both of you spoke specifically to issues around maternal health, which is our second topic of focus for Voices 2020. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and ask Tamara and Kristen, specifically, what are the ways that Tennessee struggles to support women's pregnancy and health journeys, and what are the consequences of these systemic level failure? So I'm going to start with Tamara and ask for your insight here.
Absolutely. I just want to piggyback on the point you made about interconnectedness. And in terms of moms and babies, we know that their health is interconnected. And just to kind of lay the lay of the land in Tennessee, each year about 9,000 babies are born premature. And then on the maternal side, in Tennessee, about 80 women lose their life due to complications associated with pregnancy, whether that's immediately following delivery or within a 1-year time frame. So I think understanding those two pieces gives us some opportunity for where policy intervention and change might be necessary. So beyond the traditional setting of, doctor-patient type of interaction, there are models such as group prenatal care, where women can receive their medical care, meet with women who are along the same length of pregnancy, and also develop some social support. And those types of models can really change those numbers that I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. So, one of the disclaimers that I always use whenever I'm talking about Homeland Heart is that we unapologetically only work with Black women. Originally, we were for women of color. It was actually my husband that said, I don't think you guys should be for women of color. I think you guys should be for Black women, because the experiences of women of color across the board are different. If we can create some practices, really innovative practices that can help Black women, those things will help every woman. What we seek to do is be that innovative in between that Tamara was talking about, so that we're not just talking about doctor patient. We do recognize that there are a lot of gaps.
Thank you all for your comments and for sharing, and especially for bringing light to these issues in relation to your work and your organization. I'm going to ask us just very quickly to shift gears and talk about how this current climate, in our current context, this great year of 2020, has invited us to look different at these issues. Quickly tell me about how the current pandemic has emphasized our need for paid leave in Tennessee.
Yeah, so I think, one thing the pandemic has done is reshifted or reframed the quite absurd way that we value work in our society. So we saw essential workers, who are typically the lowest paid and the lowest protected, were the ones at the most risk during this period of time and during stay at home and lockdown.
And at a better balance, we have long said that paid sick days are an urgent public health matter. If you don't have it, then you're working, preparing food, you are spreading illnesses to everyone who eats that food and every customer and coworker that you come into contact with. Now we have this extremely stark example that you can't argue with. You can't argue with the fact that if our country, like so many other countries, had paid sick days, then we wouldn't have seen the spread that we did.
Well, I'll say in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic and pregnancy, there's still a lot that's unknown about the impact of this virus on pregnancy. And so it just raises the question of comparing the other respiratory illnesses where pregnant women may be at increased risk of some complications. And so really putting some precautions in place, similar to what we see across the board with mask protection, washing of hands and things of that nature.
Well, another one of the things that we're doing over at Homeland Heart with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic is we've actually just finalized the conversation that we've been having on our executive board about creating a fund that will assist Black women in the ability to afford home birth. What we are hoping to be able to do is kind of pull more eligible, qualified Black women out of the hospital setting and help them stay at home. What we recognize with that is that one of the largest barriers is that currently we only know of one insurance company that 100% covers home birth. Otherwise, you're looking at about a $5,000 bill. So we are hoping to be able to come in and really help alleviate some of that burden. And what we hope to do with that is to alleviate some of the stress that we know Black women are experiencing.
Wow, so much to take in, and we've learned so much during our time together. I always like to end on a high note. There's lots of information that felt so heavy, lots of ways in which you all should celebrate the success of your organization. But one quick, super fast lightning round for you. What's one thing that gives you hope? I'll start with Kelly.
Black women's leadership is giving me hope.
That is a great answer. And I will say the Tennessee Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is giving me hope. And to the point of Black women's leadership, huge shout out to Tamara, who worked with us on passing that legislation. It goes into effect today, so we're very excited. And of course, the Women's Fund for Greater Chattanooga, another wonderful partner in getting that passed.
And I was going to say partnerships and collaboration give me hope.
I'm going to say that the pandemic is giving me hope. I think that when we were first introduced to coronavirus, we had a lot to think about. What I saw was the ability to reformat and really rethink the things that we are doing in our society.
Wow, so much to celebrate, but so far to go. Kelly, Elizabeth, Tamara, and Kristen, thank you so much for your unwavering commitment to women and girls. For our listeners, thank you so much for sitting in on our Voices 2020 Issues Roundtable. I urge you to support our partners at Awake, A Better Balance, March of Dimes, and Homeland Heart, as they walk hand in hand with the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga to move Tennessee from 49 to 1 for every woman and every girl. You can view the entire engaging roundtable discussion via our YouTube channel or the link on our Facebook page. Once again, I want to thank our amazing partners who continue to champion this work with us. Our Nightingale Network is the arm of collective philanthropy here at the Women's Fund. Each year, the Nightingale Network membership fees are used to fund an annual grant to a community organization that is ultimately selected by a voting process amongst the members. Since 2011, Nightingale Network grants have awarded more than $77,000 to area nonprofits. This year, despite the pandemic, the Nightingale Network was able to exceed their fundraising goal, awarding $10,000 to the grant winner and just over $1,000 to each of the remaining 2 finalists. I'm excited to announce that this year, our 3 finalists are Partnership for Family, Children, and Adults, A Step Ahead Chattanooga, and Girls Inc. Without further ado, this year's Nightingale grant recipient is A Step Ahead Chattanooga. Congratulations to the amazing staff, board, and volunteers at A Step Ahead Chattanooga. It was truly a difficult task for our Nightingale Network members to select just one of the 3 deserving finalists. Join me in learning a little bit more about the transformative work of A Step Ahead.
At A Step Ahead Chattanooga, we believe that when women can get pregnant on their terms at a time that's right for them, then they have a better shot at getting a step ahead, whether that's a step ahead in their education or in their careers, or just sometimes it means helping their family get and stay ahead. So we provide access to birth control for women in Southeast Tennessee. But we also believe that providing accurate sex education and information about contraception is just as important as providing free access. This summer, we partnered with other community organizations and piloted a program to deliver the Power Through Choices curriculum to 125 Chattanooga youth. It's a 5-week, evidence-based, trauma-informed, LGBTQ inclusive curriculum taught by trained health educators. Nowhere else do students receive comprehensive sexual health information except through projects like this.
This program was so important to the girls that I serve. Many of them come from single-parent households. I also have households represented that have absentee mothers. This program gave them education outside of school that will equip them in the real world. A Step Ahead has provided a fun and safe environment outside of school where kids could express their thoughts and concerns about sex. It is my hope that this program will expand and reach even more teens and empower them with the tools that they need to make sound decisions about their sexual health.
A Nightingale Network grant would allow us to replicate the program and offer it to 60 additional students in our community so that we can continue to fill the gaps left by Tennessee's abstinence-only sex education policy. Thank you for your consideration. Together, we can empower future generations of our Chattanooga community.
Again, please join me in congratulating A Step Ahead. We are certain that the funds will be used to add one drop in that bucket that helps move Tennessee from 49 to 1. We're so thankful to have you as partners in this work. I want to thank all of the members of our Nightingale Network, the committee, and a special thank you to our co-chairs, Kelly Allen and Amanda Lemming, for your leadership, creativity, and passion. If you are interested in exercising your voice next year through our philanthropic arm, please consider becoming a member of the Nightingale Network. Jennifer will share more about this a little bit later on. Here at the Women's Fund, we make it a priority to provide various ways for you to exercise your voice. One of those pathways includes direct giving. And our network never disappoints. Even in peculiar times such as these, you all have managed to donate over $5,000 just in the 35 minutes that we've been on this call together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's not too late. You can still support the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga by texting a gift, the information on your screen, or of course, visiting our website. As many of you know, this year marks the centennial anniversary for the 19th Amendment, the shoulders on which this work that we champion stands. Please join members of our Voices Committee as we reflect on the power and legacy of this movement.
Hi, I'm Linda Hood, co-chair of Voices this year.
And I'm Nicole Watson, Waller Law Firm attorney and member of Voices Committee.
This year across the country, we have been celebrating the centennial of the women's suffrage, and Tennessee played the most important key role in the ratification of the 19th Amendment.
For over 70 years, American women have been fighting to secure suffrage, a campaign that challenged the White House and targeted Congress until federal lawmakers finally passed the 19th Amendment in June of 1919. But more than a year later, the amendment had yet to become law. It needed the backing of 3/4 of U.S. states, and by the summer of 1920, only 35 of the country's legislators had agreed to ratify. Tennessee, with its divided allegiances, had a chance to become the perfect 36. And then a boy listened to his mama, Hugh Harry Byrne. At 24, the youngest state lawmaker, he had voted twice to table the amendment, and on his lapel wore a red rose against suffrage. But on the day of the vote, he changed the red rose to yellow and voted for suffrage and listened to his mama, making Tennessee the perfect 36th.
Without that amendment in place, you would not see women at the height of leadership that we are now seeing. This is truly an exceptional educational opportunity for the next generation to appreciate suffragette efforts, what worked and what didn't work, and bring it forward to today and what we are called on to do. We have made so much progress, yet the finish line is still far in the distance. Let us all pick up the torch before us and vote. Vote to maintain the progress our foremothers championed. But more importantly, vote to ensure a brighter, more equitable future for our daughters, granddaughters, nieces, and every woman and girl across Tennessee. This year has offered us so many opportunities to celebrate and reflect. The life and legacy of late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg was a true embodiment of the hope and promise of the 19th Amendment. Today, because of the work of Justice Ruth Ginsburg and her fight and mission for equality for women, we say thank you that a woman can have a credit card in her name, can have her own credit history, can lease an apartment or buy a house or car in her name, can sign her own medical treatment and for the medical treatment of her children. And in addition, we do not have to complete a statement on a job application regarding pregnancy. And we do not have to take maternity leave early in a job because of company policy. Like these courageous and fearless women over the century, we together can make a difference. Life is harder for women in Tennessee than almost every other state in this country, but no longer. The Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga is leading the effort to move Tennessee from 49 to 1. Join us and let's work together to create a lasting change for the women of our state.
Thank you. Thanks again to Nicole and Linda. Remembering the time, dedication, and sacrifice it took to secure the right for women to vote and Tennessee's role in that landmark legislation 100 years ago is important. We must remember our rights and civic responsibility to vote now. When we talk about taking Tennessee from 49 to 1 of the items Tennessee must improve is voter participation. Tennessee's low rate of voter participation is one of the scores that brings our standing down. Help us improve our standing as women and as Tennesseans in exercising your hard-won right to vote. We need Tennessee to move from 49 to 1. You also saw earlier the direct local impact of our collective philanthropy group, the Nightingale Network. I personally invite you to join the Nightingale Network and have a vote for next year's grant recipient. Memberships begin at $25 for students and $50 for other members. If you've been inspired by the impact of our advocacy work, also please consider joining our advocacy committee. We have an active and effective committee supporting our work. Erica will now share a few other ways to support the Women's Fund and local partners.
Thank you, Jennifer. We here at the Women's Fund are truly thankful for the support and partnership of local businesses. We are excited to announce a new partnership with Ben & Jerry's, specifically the shop on Broad Street. As a part of our social mission, their social mission, they are committed to working with us to shake things up for women and girls. To that regard, they will have a sponsored milkshake available in shop for purchase, which a percentage of those sales will come back to the Women's Fund to advance our work. Treat yourself to something sweet, support local businesses, and invest in the work at the Women's Fund along the way. I want to personally thank each of you for making my First Voices experience truly memorable. To our sponsors at First Horizon, BB&T SunTrust, now Truist, EPB Fiber Optics, and our presenting sponsor at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, thank you for continuing to invest in this meaningful work. To our board and our staff, I want to give a special thank you to Janine and Katie for being true rock stars. It is such an honor to do this work alongside you all. Our Voices Committee, our event co-chairs, and the entire Nightingale Network, thank you. Last but not least, I want to thank our tech maestros behind the scenes, Ashley and Talitha. Thank you so much for making Voices 2020 Luncheon a success. Jennifer?
Thank you, Erica. And thank you for all your hard work in this too. This has been quite the introduction to you for the Women's Fund the last few months. In addition to the Ben & Jerry's collaboration, I also want to point out our very own board member and owner of K Boutique, Catherine Roberts, is offering a give back event on November 11th. Please visit K Boutique on November 11th and support both the Women's Fund and a local business. Once again, we thank you for attending today. Thank you to our staff, board, volunteers, sponsors, and donors. We couldn't do what we do without your support. In combination from what we've received online on our website, as well as the text to give, we are closing in on $6,000 raised in this lunch hour. So thank you so much for your support. As a reminder, please text TN4921 to 243-725 to donate. Also remember today we have a matching grant up to $10,000. So I hope we can meet and exceed that goal today from that generous donor. So that those numbers just keep coming in and it's amazing to see. So thank you so much for your support. We will keep this text to give portal open for the rest of the day, and you can always donate by visiting ChattanoogaWomen'sFund.org. This year has been without a doubt a challenge for many, and our hearts go out to those who have been impacted by the pandemic. Within our own Women's Fund family, we've been impacted both directly and indirectly. When we had our first virtual meeting earlier this spring, I shared a cliche line that came to mind. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And it couldn't be further from, it's completely true. That's exactly what this amazing team has done. In the middle of these challenging times, Janine welcomed her new baby and continued her successful advocacy work. Katie continued to manage her work in addition to scrambling like so many others with new childcare and educational demands for her children. With Kelly Allen's leadership of the Nightingale Network, They exceeded their goal, and we were able to offer both a grant to A Step Ahead and additional grants to the Partnership for Family, Children, and Adults, as well as Girls Inc. The board came together to welcome Erica, our new executive director, who has managed a move to Chattanooga, help with educational needs of her family, and has already begun to make many new meaningful connections for the Women's Fund. The Voices Committee was challenged with a complete overhaul of this event and have done a wonderful job making the most of the circumstances. Thank you to Linda and Carla, along with the members of the Voices Committee. So if that saying is true, I'd say we're pretty tough. We've definitely kept things going. Thanks once again for attending, and thank you for supporting the work of the Women's Fund. I'd like to propose a toast to close out the Voices Luncheon today. Please join me in raising your glass to the many women who have come before us, to the girls who will follow, and in celebration of our successes today. Cheers.